Okay, everybody, so we're ready to pick up where we left off. We had our expression, the square root of 2/3, and we were talking about how do we perform the operation of division. Well, the first thing we talked about is if your radicand is a fraction inside, maybe you should just do the reducing of the fraction and divide it. Well, we know with 2/3, that fraction is in lowest terms. So we can't do anything with the fraction inside. It's already in simplest form. So the next thing we talked about is that if you have a fraction inside a root symbol, a radical sign, you're to give the radical symbol both to the numerator and the denominator. Therefore, we can rewrite this expression as square root of 2 over square root of 3. So now we have square root of 2 divided by square root of 3. So now we're looking at it as the operation of division. Well, they're both square roots. So the question is, can you divide 2, that radicand, by 3, the other radicand? And again, our answer is no. The other thing to look at is, because we're dealing with square roots, can we break them down, simplify them? Well, 2 and 3 are both prime numbers, so they're already in lowest terms. So there's nothing we can do to simplify square root of 2 over square root of 3. The problem is this, and it goes back to 3rd grade math. It's understanding arithmetic. Anytime you write an answer that has a fraction bar, that implies division. And when you're talking about a fraction, division, the denominator, the bottom, must be a positive whole number. So if you look at my expression, square root of 2 divided by square root of 3, the denominator is positive, but it is not a whole number. Square root of 3 is not a whole number because 3 is not a perfect square. So now we have a real major issue, because we can't leave the answer like that. In mathematics, when you write an answer as a fraction, the denominator always must be a whole number. So what we have to do is go back to 3rd grade and think about the concept equivalent fractions. How can I write a fraction that's equivalent to square root of 2 divided by square root of 3? And we all know from 3rd grade math, to write equivalent fractions, we do the operation multiplication. Okay, so now here's our problem. What do you multiply to a square root of 3 that will guarantee it will become a whole number? Well, in our studies of multiplying radical expressions, you can only multiply a square root to another square root. So I'm going to take a square root of 3 and multiply it by itself, a square root of 3. And that's going to guarantee we get a whole number. Because if you recall, square root of 3 times square root of 3 would be square root of 9. Now 9 is a perfect square, and the square root of 9 is 3. That process you're doing of multiplying the denominator by a term that will make it a whole number is called, in algebra, rationalizing the denominator. All it really is doing is forming an equivalent fraction. So it's really just doing 3rd grade math. We just give it a fancy name. So let's go back. We have our expression, square root of 2 divided by square root of 3. We know we can't leave that because the denominator is not a whole number. To rationalize, we do multiplication. We're going to multiply a square root of 3 to itself, square root of 3. But if we do it to the bottom, the denominator, we also have to do it to the top, the numerator, to keep balance. So now we're multiplying fractions. Well, we know this. Multiplying fractions is no problem. Top times top, bottom times bottom. Square root of 2 times square root of 3 would be square root of 6. In the denominator, square root of 3 times square root of 3 would be square root of 9. Now look closely. You have square root of 6 over square root of 9. What do you notice about the denominator? That's right, 9 is a perfect square. If 9 is a perfect square, you can square root it. What is the square root of 9, everybody? Hey, that's 3. So now the denominator is the whole number 3. Can you do anything with the numerator, square root of 6? No, 6 is not a perfect square, and there is no perfect square that divides into or factors into 6. So we leave 6 inside. That new fraction, square root of 6 divided by 3, is an acceptable answer in math. It's a fraction, and the denominator is a whole number. I understand if you tell me to divide into 3 groups. So what you learned today is in mathematics, when your final answer is written with a fraction bar, you always double check that that denominator is a whole number. If it's not, then you're going to have to multiply by a term that will guarantee it becomes a whole number. All that's doing is making equivalent fractions. They just give it a fancy name in algebra. They call it rationalizing the denominator, which is, in easy words, says you got the root symbol gone out of the denominator. All right, let's go to the whiteboard and practice this.